Sometimes when solving algebraic equations, you will see that you have the variable x, or whatever variable you're using, on both sides of the equation. If that's the case, after simplifying both sides if possible, you want to work on getting the variables on the same side. In this case, I have 2x on one side and I have x on the other side. In order to get the variables on the same side, I'm going to go through and I'm going to subtract x from both sides. If I subtract x from both sides, and then I simplify both sides, on the left-hand side, 2x subtract x just gives me x, so I'm left with x plus 4. And on the right-hand side, I did get rid of the x that I had there because x subtract x gives me 0. So on the right-hand side, I'm just left with x is equal to negative 3. Now at this particular point, I'm down to a single step equation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And when I subtract 4 from both sides, I get x on the left-hand side, and negative 3 subtract 4 gives me a negative 7. And if I go back and I check to see whether or not that works, if x is equal to negative 7, on the left-hand side, 2 times the negative 7 is negative 14, plus 4 gives me a negative 10. And on the right-hand side, negative 7 subtract 3 also gives me a negative 10. So I know that my negative 7 is the correct answer. Here's one more problem that puts everything together that we've talked about in this video together. What I'd like you to do is I'd like you to solve this by yourself first of all. So I'd like you to pause this, solve it, and then you can start it back up again after you've done it, just to see how I go through and do it. Okay, hopefully you have gone through and worked on this. If I was going to go through and do this particular problem, the very first thing I would do is I would simplify the left-hand side. I see I do have some things that I can go through here and I can combine. I have a 3x and a 5x. 3x plus 5x gives me 8x. I also have a negative 1, that subtraction sign in front of the one makes a negative, and I also have a negative 6. So negative 1 subtract 6 gives me subtract 7. So the very first thing, as I said, I would do is I would go through and I would simplify that left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, I have x plus 7. Now at this particular point, I have x's on both sides, and I want to get the x on the same side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to subtract x from both sides. When I subtract x from both sides and then simplify, I am going to be left with 7x subtract 7 on the left-hand side, and I'm just going to be left with 7 on the right-hand side. Now I would just go through and add 7 to both sides. When I add 7 to both sides, on the left-hand side I'm left with 7x, on the right-hand side I am left with 14. And now I am just going to divide both sides by 7, so I get a final answer of x is equal to 2. Sometimes in the past, people have asked me for a set of steps that they could follow to solve algebraic equations. So I've written down 4 different steps that you can follow if you would like to. Remember, you don't have to do them necessarily in this order. Some people would switch 2 and 3 around and get rid of the constants first instead of the variables. It doesn't really matter. But if you would like a set of steps, as I said, to follow, this would be a set of steps that would work. Once again, I would like you to complete a quick check on this video before moving on to the next video. After the quick check, you will also find another set of supplemental problems you can do for more practice if you are interested. And, as always, please remember that my job is to help you when you have questions. So if I can help in any way, please let me know.